It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Today, our guest is guitarist Matt Stubbs from GA-20. They just released a new album, Crackdown. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the name GA-20. How did that come about?
So GA-20 is an old Gibson amplifier made in the 50s. I believe 1949 to 1961 is when they were manufactured. And when Pat, the singer, and the other guitarist in GA-20 and myself started the band, we started doing gigs around Boston, didn't have a name. And then when we went into the recording studio, we had to come up with a name, and most good band names are already taken. So we just kind of looked around the room, and I was using a GA-20 at the time. So we just went with that, not thinking that, we were gonna put a bunch of records out and going on tour or whatever. But so that's where it came from.
Is that your GA-20 or did it belong to the studio?
That was mine. We have a bunch of them now, but I owned a couple of them. Yeah.
What is it that you like about GA-20s?
Well, I'm a big vintage gear head. And I got the first GA-20 I got was a gift from a friend of mine, and basically I fell in love with it. It just sounds like an old tweed amp, like an old Fender amp, a little darker, but they're much more affordable, or they used to be, compared to Fenders. So I was able to afford them years ago. So I have a collection of them because of that. But they sound great. They just sound like an old, distorted, cool tweed amp.
So you guys just released the new album, Crackdown. One of the things that kind of grabbed my attention was it's a very compact album. Kind of reminds me of like a punk rock record or a garage rock record. The songs are very tight, a couple minutes long. Was that a conscious effort, or was that just something that happened organically?
We've always been fans of song. So I know in blues, especially these days, a lot of modern blues stuff or songs become platforms to solo. So
right,
especially if it's a slow blues or something, it can become a long thing. But we've always written songs. It's always been kind of that approach to it. All the stuff we listen to from the 50s or 60s are 2 or 3 minute songs. They were cut to be on 45s and stuff. So we're just influenced by that. It was not really a thing to think about, just how we write.
So when you're in the studio, do you have guys, your different members of the group, do people try to push you into something longer? Do you sort of push back and say, hey, we don't want to do these solos, we have the ability to do that? What is the reason why? Is it that you don't like that extended, or is that just more of your calling card and you want people to focus only on the songs and not get confused with the lengthy instrumental?
The first part of your question, luckily we don't have that. I produce the record, so it's usually in the studio. It's just myself, Pat, Tim, the drummer, and an engineer. So but the three of us in the band kind of have the same idea of how we want things to sound. So we're usually on the same page with that. For me, I can't speak for the other guys totally, but like I said before, all the blues music I listened to were songs. They were based around the song. If there was a solo, whether it's guitar, saxophone, keyboard, or harmonica, it served the song. It was not, the stuff I love is about that. It's about the vibe, the story, a lot like actually very similar to country music. So we're just coming from that place. There's just no, if the song calls for a longer solo live, we open up on some stuff and jam and do more extended stuff. But all the music I've ever listened to doesn't really do that. So it's just kind of what we're influenced by.
Yeah. Talking about those influences, who are some of those big inspirations for you?
Sure. I mean, I grew up, I still listen to this day, Earl Hooker, obviously Muddy Waters, early Buddy Guy, Guitar Slim Harpo, Clarence Skate Mullet Brown, all kinds of guys like that. All the earlier, guys that were coming up in the late 50s, early 60s, Magic Sam, Otis Rush.
So you mentioned about opening up live. Where are you right now?
I'm sitting in a Burger King parking lot just outside of Nashville. We're starting a tour tonight. The Basement East is where we're playing tonight in Nashville, and we're out for about 5 weeks. So this is the first. We've been driving. Look at my computer here. We've been driving for about 16 hours now.
Wow. And you guys are playing a lot of tour dates. To you, what do you think are the best things about being on the road touring, and what are the worst things?
The best thing is being on stage and playing music for people in person. We've always loved doing that. And I think blues music, that's to me the most important thing is doing it live. I love making records, but It's all just a vehicle to be able to go perform and be in the same room with people. That's one of the best things. Food. I love food. We all love food in the band, so we love going different places and eating. The worst part, I guess, just being away from home, missing my dog. I got a cool dog, but I've always been on the road, so I'm just used to it. It feels weird. When we had the 2 years off, it felt weird to be home for 2 years,
Is Crackdown a result of being able to write songs, having that time off the road to sit down? And I don't know if you guys did it together or over Zoom or how you were able to do that. Is that a result of that? Or is this something that you did when the pandemic started to open up?
Crackdown was actually recorded before the pandemic. This is the follow-up to our first record, Lonely Soul. And we were going to release it in 2020. And then when everything shut down, we were talking with our label and we all kind of agreed we should wait because we wanted to be able to tour behind it. Exactly. Just like right now, going out for weeks and promoting the record. So we put it on the shelf. And then during COVID, because we had nothing else going on, we ended up getting approached by Alligator Records and got them to work with our record label. And then that's when we recorded the Hound Dog tribute record, the one that came out last year. So that actually ended up being more of the COVID process, not this record. This record was already done.
And speaking about the songs on this record, is there any song on there that you're particularly proud of?
I'm proud of the whole record. I guess if I had to pick a favorite, Dry Run is probably one of my favorite ones on the record, just because I feel like it kind of blurs the line from country music and traditional blues music. It's got a little bit different from what we put out in the past.
Traditional blues music, I believe that at one point in your life, you were the guitar player with Charlie Musselwhite. Can you talk a little bit about that and how cool that obviously must have been and how much you learned?
I actually still play with Charlie. So in between these tours, I've been with him. I believe this is my 15th year. It's great. It's been great. He's like family to me at this point. Pretty nerve-wracking the first year playing with him. I got the call kind of out of the blue. His drummer is named June Core, and him and I were doing some gigs with a different singer at the time. And when Charlie's last guitar player decided to move on to other things, June just recommended me. So I was just sitting at home and I got a call. I obviously knew who Charlie was, but I didn't know him personally. I think I only ever met him once. But it's been great, man. He's a legend, and he's met all the people that I just talked about. He knew personally, all these heroes of mine. He's definitely kind of the bridge to hear those stories and hear what those people were like and what the scene was like back then.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned spending all these years with him?
Just the history of Chicago blues and all the people he hung out with. I've been with him for 15 years, traveled in vans and airplanes and buses and everything. And I still every time I see him, I get a new story out of him. He's got endless amount of knowledge from Chicago blues.
Now that you're back on the road, do you find yourself doing a lot of writing on the road, or do you sort of split when we're on the road and when we're doing our writing phase and we're in the studio? Or is it all mixed up with you guys?
It's probably pretty split. Like when we're on the road, it's really pretty hectic. We're out for 5 weeks and we're doing just shy of 12,000 miles. So there's not a ton of time to write. Luckily, during the 2-year break, we did that Hound Dog record, but we got 2 other records done as well. So after Crackdown, we have 2 more releases scheduled. So I'm not in writing mode at the moment, but I should be. I'm more in tour mode and get to the gig.
Awesome, Matt. Well, it's been great having you on the show. Crackdown just released. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Just hope to see you out on the road and take a listen to the record. You can hear it on all the streaming, all that stuff. So find us online.
All right, Matt. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Matt Stubbs of GA-20 and Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.